When you're looking for an elite wideout in your fantasy football draft next year, you've got a lot of options, but who are the top targets, the guys that you need to have exposure to? Here are favorites that you need to have. If you're ready to start drafting right now, you actually don't have to wait. Get on Underdog and do a best ball draft. They have tournaments open right now where you can draft and take advantage of those pre-NFL draft values on rookies, free agents, and more. Get in there right now. You can download the Underdog Fantasy app or click on the link in the description. Just make sure if you're signing up for the very first time on Underdog, use promo code NGAME because that gets you a 100% deposit match up to $100. All right, first up is a familiar name.
Yeah, I've got to have Amon-Ra St. Brown as often as I can this year. Last year I was saying in the first round, CeeDee Lamb was the wide receiver. You know, if I didn't have like an early pick, CeeDee Lamb was the wide receiver I needed in the first round. That's how I feel about Amon-Ra St. Brown this year. CeeDee Lamb last year entering year 4, Amon-Ra St. Brown entering year 4. Like CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown has gotten better in every category every year of his career. He's increased his targets, his receptions, his yards, his touchdowns every year of his career. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is ready to make that CeeDee Lamb type of leap and potentially be the top scoring wide receiver in fantasy football. They play kind of a similar role, mostly out of the slot, but they're still effective wide receivers on the outside. He's got Jared Goff. He's got this Detroit Lions offense. He's got basically no competition for targets. I mean, Sam Laporta is probably his toughest competition for targets. Maybe Jameson Williams every now and then does something. But really, this is all Amon-Ra St. Brown here. I wouldn't be surprised if he led the entire NFL in targets and receptions this year and just had a huge year and helped people win fantasy championships the same way CeeDee Lamb did last year.
Well, I'll go with another repeat customer here. I'm going to keep saying I'm in on DJ Moore this year, probably higher than the consensus. I don't quite have him in the first round, but I'm pretty close. He's an early second round pick for me, and I'll tell you why. Well, it's funny because, with DJ Moore for the first few years in Carolina, he was a guy that was like, yeah, you know what you're getting. He'll get 1,000 yards, but he'll probably score 4 or 5 touchdowns. He's fine, but he's not going to help you win a championship. And then going to Chicago, and there was a lot of question marks about him, about Justin Fields. What happened last year? 1,364 yards. He had his best season. And he did what he can do and help you win on a weekly basis. He hit the deep ball a lot, had some monster games, averaged 14.2 yards per reception, which isn't surprising because he averages 14.3 for his career. This guy is a big play threat. And as far as the situation, okay, it does matter who the quarterback is, but I'll tell you what, I feel good either way because I like Justin Fields, and whether you like him or not, it doesn't matter. You saw the connection between Fields and DJ Moore coming off, like I just said, his best season. If Justin Fields is still the quarterback in 2024, this is a good thing for DJ Moore. What if they decide to go Caleb Williams? Is that a step down? Well, according to everyone who thinks Caleb Williams is the best quarterback, prospect in the last several years, possibly, maybe it's even an upgrade. But I'll tell you what is also an upgrade is they got a new offensive coordinator and not Luke Getsy. Sorry, but the creativity wasn't there. So DJ Moore, I think, has already established himself as an elite wideout, and it's hard to believe because he's been around a few years. He's still in his prime. This guy's 27 years old entering next season. He has plenty of juice left. I don't have any questions about the offense he's in. And do we really think the Bears are going to bring in a lot of competition for targets? I doubt it. Whoever they get to replace Darnell Mooney will still be a secondary option. DJ Moore is the number one receiver there by far, and he's going to be a number one receiver on a lot of my fantasy teams. All right, who else do you think could be a wide receiver one for fantasy teams next year?
Yeah, last year I was trying to draft Garrett Wilson everywhere I could, but that's because I was under the impression he was going to have Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. And unfortunately, that only lasted 4 snaps. And then we had to watch him play with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. I feel like there was somebody else in there that was even worse than those guys that I don't even remember. That's how bad it was. But you know what? Somehow, for as bad as it was, for being in arguably the worst passing offense in the NFL, he still went over 1,000 yards. He's gone over 1,000 yards both years of his career, and he hasn't played with a quarterback yet. The best quarterback, I guess you could say, he played with so far is Joe Flacco. Like, that's literally the best quarterback he has played with so far. 1,000 yards each of his first 2 seasons. He's a talented wide receiver. There's a reason he was the number one wide receiver drafted 2 years ago, because he's an elite prospect. He's an elite player. He's just been stuck in horrible situations. So I'm going to bet on the fact that Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy this year, at least play most, if not all of the games. And if he can, Garrett Wilson is ready to have a huge season, because again, if he can get 1,000 yards with basically guys who shouldn't even be in the NFL, what can he do with Aaron Rodgers? And like you said with DJ Moore, who else is taking targets from him here? There is nobody. I mean, I don't even know who their number 2 receiver is. Alan Lazard, was he even playing towards the end? Wasn't he just like a healthy scratch every week? I mean, Tyler Conklin, is he the number 2 target? Like, Garrett Wilson is going to be a target monster with a hopefully healthy Aaron Rodgers. All it really takes is for Aaron Rodgers to stay healthy all year, and if he does, Garrett Wilson should easily finish as a top 10 wide receiver, if not better.
All right, let's enter wide receiver 2 territory, but I say there are very few, if any, wide receiver 2s on their own team and in fantasy that have as much upside as Jalen Waddle. All right, homer pick time, but listen, Jalen Waddle is going to be undervalued next year because he's coming off a down season, and there will be the usual questions. Well, is he really as good as he looked in his second season? You know, are there enough targets to go around? Maybe it's just Tyreek Hill is there. Waddle is never going to step up and be an elite player. No, Waddle was hurt a lot of last year and didn't let on because he didn't miss a lot of games. He did miss a couple, but it was a back issue that bothered him early in the season. And, you know, that's the kind of nagging thing that can really affect a player, especially somebody who relies on their speed to get downfield. But all the things that aren't questions, that's what we need to focus on here. Target share, absolutely secure there because, yeah, okay, Tyreek Hill is still there. Tyreek Hill will still be there. But Jalen Waddle is not just the number 2 receiver, but it's all Hill and Waddle. They do not throw to other players, really. Once or twice a game, maybe. They don't have a pass-catching tight end. They don't have a dependable number 3 or 4 or 5 receiver. It's a bunch of guys who kind of mix and match. This offense focuses on those 2 guys. And when Waddle is healthy and he's out there, he's going to make big plays. We didn't see it as often last year, but again, I think it's because he just was never quite right. Sure, the Dolphins are one of those teams that they did take advantage of some bad defenses, and they did struggle against some good offenses. That's totally fair. They're going to have to figure out the fact that other defenses are focusing on Tyreek Hill more. I think they have to get Waddle more involved. Mike McDaniel's a smart guy. I think he'll do it. Let's not forget that in his second season, Waddle led the NFL with 18.1 yards per reception. This guy has plenty of big plays left in him. I think he'll get back closer to what we saw in the 22 season than the 23 season, and I think he's going to be a great value, and I'm going to have him on a ton of teams. All right, homer pick time for you.
Yes, I am finally back in on Terry McLaurin. Obviously, I was a big fan of Terry McLaurin. I mean, I am a big fan of Terry McLaurin, but for fantasy purposes, I really liked Terry McLaurin early on in his career. The last couple of years, I have not been on Terry McLaurin. He's continued to be drafted as kind of like a 3rd, 4th round, maybe 5th round pick because there's kind of this, stigma around him in fantasy football that he's an elite fantasy football asset to have, and he really just hasn't been. It's because the quarterback play has been so bad. I mean, 2 years ago when they brought in Carson Wentz, I was like, nope, I'm out on him, and people thought like, oh, this is what he needs, and then last year, Sam Howell, I'm like, nope, I'm out on him. And yeah, it didn't work out either of those years. But Terry McLaurin is actually a talented wide receiver. If Terry McLaurin had been on a team where he had real quarterback play, he'd be regarded as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He's been stuck in horrible situations pretty much his entire career. But that's finally going to change this year because the Commanders have the number 2 pick. And we don't have to worry about Ron Rivera blowing it by drafting an edge rusher who's not even going to make it to a second contract. They got a new GM, new coaching staff. They're going to take a quarterback. Look, maybe they trade up for Caleb Williams. Maybe they sit tight and take Drake May or Jaden Daniels. It doesn't matter. All 3 of these guys are fantastic passers who can come in and be instant impact quarterbacks, just like we saw with CJ Stroud last year, just like we saw with Justin Herbert a few years ago. These guys can come in and produce right away, and Terry McLaurin is by far and away the best pass catcher in this Commanders offense. He's still relatively young. He's not at 30 years old or anything where you have to worry about him, being dust. He still has plenty of juice left. And now he's being drafted as the wide receiver 35, barely a wide receiver 3. This is finally the year to draft Terry McLaurin, and he's going to smash his ADP. He's not just going to smash it. I think he's going to help people win fantasy championships who draft him at this ridiculous value.
All right, I don't know how many of these rookie wideouts are going to be good values because so much is going to change depending on where they land. I'll tell you what, no matter where Malik Neighbors lands, I'm in because I like what I see, and I'm going to be in on him because I think that inevitably talent rises, target share matters, but talent demands targets. He can be the number one receiver for, I think, any team as soon as he sets foot on the field. So let's start with the thing that everybody hates, the lazy comps, right? But here, let's do it. All right, Malik Neighbors. I think his floor, like the worst case scenario, is Jalen Hyatt, right? You say he's a guy who's a field stretcher, big plays, but didn't translate to the pros. Like, look, maybe Jalen Hyatt still has something in him if he has a real quarterback, but that aside, let's just say this is the worst case. The best case scenario, I see Jamar Chase 2.0. Now, that sounds extremely lazy because we were saying one LSU receiver to another, right? I see a lot of Chase in his game, the way he moves, the way he runs his routes, and I'm not the only one who sees this. I see some other well-respected, at least I respect, fancy analysts on social media pointing out the same comp. It's just what I see from his film. So does he have that huge playmaking ability? Absolutely he does. He's not quite as stocky yet as Chase, sure, but I don't think that really matters. This guy has game-changing speed. He is basically a magnet with his hands. He will catch it if it's in his vicinity. Not a huge guy, but he knows how to play to the ball. And so I see a ton of big plays in his future. Sure, landing spot matters. Jamar Chase just happened to go to a team that had his old college QB in Joe Burrow and threw it to him a lot. Maybe Neighbors won't land in the perfect spot, but that will only serve to lower his ADP to a point where I'm still going to be in on him. This guy will be an impact maker. Remember, he demanded a 26% target share despite playing next to another stud, Brian Thomas at LSU. Right? These guys are both going to be good in the pros, but I'm just all in on Neighbors because, again, the production I think will translate to the pros. Those are 6 wide receivers we need to have next year. How about 6 running backs that you need to have? We got that right here.